she said. You'll survive after charging my card $3,200 for her bachelorette. I smiled, called the police, and watched her fail to check into the hotel. Months later, I ran into her serving coffee alone, and she finally realized what she lost. I am 31. We had been together 3 years. Her name was Lauren. She was 29. Friday night, 8:12 p.m., she had that restless smile that used to mean something good. Tonight it felt different. At the restaurant, she slid a receipt across the table. I used your credit card, she said. We need it for the Bachelorette. Don't freak, you'll survive. Her thumb tapped the screen to show the charge. The number was $3,200. Charged at 7:45 p.m. I kept my hands on the table. You didn't ask, I said quietly. She shrugged and looked past me. The waiter passed. A spoon tapped its plate. The moment felt final. We shared a lease, passwords, and a wedding spreadsheet tracking deposits and appointments. I had trusted her with small things that add up to a life. For her, it seemed like a quick fix. She stood. The chair scraped. We need this, she said, jaw tight. I saw a hotel keycard peek from her purse and a suitcase in the trunk. Her movements had a resolve I hadn't seen. Outside, the air was cool. I followed because I wanted answers. You can't just take, I began. It's not stealing, she cut in. It's our money. A taxi light blinked. She hailed it as if there were no room to change her mind. At the Parkline Suites, the clerk asked for a card for incidentals. Her smile faltered. She said she would use hers, but her hands were shaking. I stepped forward and told the clerk she had used my card without permission. The lobby felt too bright. Her apology seemed lodged somewhere she couldn't reach. 2 days later, I sat in a small precinct, fluorescent lights humming, while an officer typed my statement. I handed over receipts and showed the messages that named the charge. She called. I let it go to voicemail. Her texts moved from pleading to anger, then silence. Back home, I started untangling the life we had tied together. I canceled our joint line, called the bank, and froze accounts. I deleted calendar entries for tastings and venue visits. Each deletion felt like closing another door. I printed a copy of our wedding spreadsheet, circled the first date we'd agreed to save, and drew a black line through it. Word got out. 2 nights after the failed check-in, an officer walked Lauren back to the hotel lobby while I waited across the street. She had to explain the charge and hand over receipts she didn't have. Her suitcase lay open on a bench. Guests watched. A child pointed. I felt an odd calm, like the scene finally matched the truth I had felt for days. She demanded we talk 2 days after that. We met at a coffee shop at 11 in the morning. She looked worn. I messed up, she said in short sentences. There were no long explanations, just small, brittle phrases. I listened. For 10 minutes, our words grazed each other without landing. Her admission should have been the end. It was only the beginning. The rest of that week felt suspended, like waiting for a storm to break. I had started closing the chapters of our shared life, but something else was beginning, something that would change both of us in ways neither of us expected. I could not predict how public and private reactions would fold together, or how small choices would lead to consequences neither of us could fully imagine that winter. The night at the hotel stayed with me like a recording I couldn't stop replaying. The clerk's question about a card for incidentals exposed more than a policy. It exposed the gap between what she said and what she'd done. When the officer arrived, Lauren's composure fell away in pieces. She had to explain the charge in front of strangers, to search her phone for receipts she didn't have, to name names and dates. Her suitcase sat on the bench with a dress half hanging out, as if the fabric itself were testimony. People watched. Some pretended not to, others whispered under their breath. An older couple glanced over the rim of their coffee. A child tugged at his mother and pointed. The whole scene felt small and sharp at once. I stayed back across the street, watching through the glass, feeling something settle into place, the truth no longer hidden under gestures or smooth words. After the officer left, sharing the formalities with the clerk and noting everything into their report, Lauren called twice while I waited on the curb. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened once just to hear the sound of her voice fraying at the edges. Not the practiced calm she tried to wear, but someone at the end of their rope. I didn't answer. Texts followed. Pleadings, defensiveness, then a silence I hadn't wanted but had expected. 2 days later, she wanted to talk. She insisted on the old coffee shop where we used to spend lazy afternoons, where we'd once sketched guest lists on napkins and laughed over latte art gone wrong. She arrived with smudged makeup and eyes that didn't meet mine right away. Her sentences came in short, clipped pieces. I messed up, she said. I panicked. There were no long confessions, no dramatic explanations, just small admissions that carried a stack of consequences. We argued, but the words felt thin. We carved through practical things first. She promised to contact the hotel, to sort out the receipts, to cooperate with whatever investigations were necessary. I said I would involve the bank. We both knew those calls were going to be cold and procedural. When she asked for forgiveness, it was the kind of request that wanted everything wrapped up neatly, as if trust could be returned like a package. By afternoon, I had started the paperwork to cut ties that once felt normal. I called the bank and froze our joint line. The agent on the other end asked the routine questions and typed them, click, click, into the system. It felt bureaucratic, but necessary. I canceled upcoming appointments we had on the calendar, tastings, meetings, and a floral consultation. Each deletion was a small, audible click that announced a line being drawn. I kept one physical thing, a printed copy of our wedding spreadsheet. On the top, the first line showed the date we had said, let's start saving. I circled it and drew a thick black line through that date. It felt petty and ceremonial, and also oddly right. 2 weeks after the hotel scene, at 6:43 a.m., my phone buzzed with her name. I almost didn't look. The message was short and raw. Please, I just need to talk. The voice on the call sounded worn, like she'd been awake for hours. I had spent those days untangling the life we had shared, telling our landlord, moving small boxes of my things out of the apartment in the rain, answering awkward questions from friends. I had handed over receipts and timestamps to the police, watched an officer file the report, and felt the public and private sides of the situation start to overlap. People started picking sides in small digital spaces that felt louder than they should. When she went public on social media a day later, the story shifted again. Her post framed things as if I were the one overreacting. A common refrain when emotions are raw and narratives get shaped by a single crafted sentence. Her friends rallied with supportive comments, quick phrases that felt performative once the facts came out. Screenshots from the police report slipped into a local wedding Facebook group. Private messages circulated. The narrative she tried to sell began to crack. Her maid of honor texted me, furious and defensive at first, then confused when I sent receipts and timelines. People I'd never met weighed in online. I didn't respond to the noise. I let the evidence speak. It wasn't about a spectacle for me. It was about something quieter, the cost of trust, and what happens when it's taken for granted. A day after the hotel incident, I saw her post on Instagram. Some men can't handle strong women who want to celebrate love. Her friends reacted with cheers, hearts, and comments like, girl, you deserve better. The words were meant to shame me, to make her seem heroic, but I knew what had really happened. She had taken my money without permission. That wasn't strength, that was theft. I didn't respond publicly. I let the police report and the receipts speak for themselves. Screenshots of the charges and messages slowly made their way into a local wedding Facebook group. Her story crumbled quietly while she thought she had an audience cheering her on. Then came her calls. Anger replaced the performative tone she tried online. You embarrassed me, she snapped. I stayed calm. No, I said evenly. You did that when you used my card. She hung up, words cut off like a tape being pulled too fast. Her maid of honor texted me. She says you overreacted. You really called the cops. I replied, yes. That's what you do when someone uses your money without permission. 3 days later, she showed up at my door. The rain had soaked her dress, and mascara streaked down her cheeks. She said softly, I just wanted to talk. I didn't step closer. You had every chance to talk before using my money, I said. She tried to justify it. It was supposed to be fun, just one last party before marriage. I let the word hang between us. Marriage? You used the man you planned to marry as an ATM. She took a small step forward. I still love you. I stepped back. You love what I took. That's not love. She didn't argue further. For the first time, I think she realized I wasn't losing anything anymore. The week after, the hotel filed fraud charges. Multiple deposits she'd made with my card pushed the total to $4,800. Her lawyer contacted me for statements. I sent everything. Receipts, timestamps, messages. I didn't add emotion. I sent facts. She was temporarily suspended from work. Friends who had mocked me went quiet online. Meanwhile, I started my move. A fresh apartment, a fresh start in a new city. I let go of the anger in practical ways. Canceled the apartment lease, closed joint accounts, and removed her from all shared services. Everything that tied our lives together was undone. Then, one evening, an email arrived from her. She asked for help, explaining that she was facing real charges. I stared at it for a long time, and I wrote back only 5 words. You said I'd survive. I did. I sent it and shut my laptop. I thought that would be the end. But 6 months later, fate had other plans. She would get to see exactly what she had lost, and it wouldn't come from my doing, not directly. Life, it seemed, had a way of arranging its own reckoning. In the quiet of my new apartment, with the city humming outside the window, I realized that trust isn't something that can be reclaimed with an apology or explanation. It is earned slowly, tested, and sometimes, once broken, can only be replaced by clarity and distance. The lessons weren't about revenge, not really. They were about boundaries, about consequences that follow naturally when someone underestimates the cost of what they take. And as much as she might have thought she was teaching me something, in the end, it was her story that unraveled. Life moved forward, slowly at first, almost unnoticed. I didn't think about her much, Lauren, but I carried the weight of what had happened, the quiet reminder that trust can't be replaced with words alone. I focused on my own life, on routines, on small things that had nothing to do with her. It was enough. Until one morning, it wasn't. It was a cold December morning in Portland. I was running late, trying to grab coffee before a meeting downtown. The streets were wet from overnight rain, and the air had that sharp edge winter mornings bring. I walked into a small cafe, ordered black coffee, and reached for my wallet, just like any other day. Then I heard it. Lucas. I froze. That voice, the one that once said, "I love you and later, you'll survive," was unmistakable. Behind the counter stood Lauren. Her hair tied back, her makeup muted, a barista apron over her clothes. The confident, untouchable woman I had known was now serving coffee to strangers. Her smile was tentative, unsure. It wasn't sharp or used like a weapon anymore. It looked like she was holding herself together just enough to get through the shift. I nodded slowly, words unnecessary. Guess I survived, huh? Her face fell slightly. The cafe was quiet except for the hiss of steamed milk and the low murmur of early patrons. I noticed the exhaustion under her eyes, the kind that comes from realizing consequences, not from lack of sleep. She tried to speak. I lost my job after everything. I read about it, I said. Fraud charges are hard to explain on resumes. She flinched, and for a moment, I felt no anger, only understanding of the weight of mistakes. I didn't mean for it to go that far, she said quietly. I just thought that I'd cover your mess like always. I interrupted. The words weren't shouted. They were steady, calm. A pause stretched between us, heavy and familiar, the same silence that used to live in our arguments. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. Can we start over? Not as a couple. Just talk. I studied her carefully. Her hands fidgeted, her lips bitten in that old, nervous way that once would have made me soften. But that Lucas, the one who would have forgiven, was gone. I don't think so, I said. Some bridges aren't burned, they're erased. She blinked, trying to find a way to argue, to justify, to fix it. I miss who we were. I nodded once, picked up my coffee, and left a $20 bill on the counter. Me too, I said. But who we were died the moment you swiped that card. And I walked out. Walking down the wet sidewalk, I felt something new. Not triumph, not gloating. Peace. For the first time, it wasn't about what she lost or how karma had found her. It was about what I had regained. Control, clarity, the ability to move forward without resentment. Weeks later, she sent one last message. Simple, short, quiet. You really did survive. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the truth was simple. She had taught me the price of blind trust, and I had learned how to rebuild a life without bitterness. Months passed. Life settled into a rhythm I hadn't expected. I started dating again. Someone new, grounded, the kind of person who made ordinary moments feel calm and good. Her name was Mia. Bright, patient, and steady. She wasn't flashy, didn't crave drama, and somehow, in the quiet way she existed, reminded me that life could be simple again. 5 months into our relationship, we attended a friend's wedding together. The hall was warm, filled with laughter, music, and the kind of energy that makes you notice details you'd normally miss. Mia leaned close and whispered, "You'll never guess who's here." I turned, and there she was. Lauren. Alone. Near the back. Her dress was plain, not the one she would have chosen for a party or to impress anyone. There was no smile, no laughter, no champagne in hand. Just her, watching from a distance. Our eyes met for a brief second. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I nodded once. She looked away first. The DJ changed the song to something slow, soft, and unremarkable. I held Mia's hand, guiding her to the dance floor. Lauren stood, clutching her purse, and left before the evening had really begun. That was the moment I truly understood the weight of what had happened. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about public humiliation or dramatic payback. It was about seeing the consequences of her choices land exactly where they should. She had lost her footing in life. I had found mine again. Weeks later, a short text appeared on my phone. Simple, direct. You really did survive. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. No anger, no explanation, no negotiation. She had already spoken her truth through her actions. Through the aftermath, she couldn't control. Looking back, I realized that the lesson wasn't about punishment. It was about clarity, boundaries, and self-respect. Trust isn't just given. It's earned, maintained, and protected. When someone treats it carelessly, you can respond with anger, but the most effective response is to take your life back piece by piece, without letting bitterness shape who you are. I rebuilt my life quietly. I kept the good things, the routines, the new apartment, the simple joys that no one could take from me. The wedding spreadsheet, the canceled appointments, the frozen accounts. They were markers of decisions I had made to protect myself. Each one was a small reclaiming of autonomy I had lost for a brief, costly moment. Lauren learned her lesson. I had moved on, and I understood something essential. Survival isn't dramatic. It isn't revenge or spectacle. It's quiet. It's steady. And it's enough. She lost the man who could have built her a life. I became that man, just not for her. I share this story not for sympathy, not for applause, but because people often underestimate the cost of taking what isn't theirs. Betrayal doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it's quiet. But consequences have a way of catching up, often in ways the betrayer never anticipates. So, for anyone listening, watching, or reading this, what would you do if someone took your trust as casually as money? Would you fight, forgive, or step back and let life handle the balance?